What's up, everybody? Once again, it's Brand Man Sean, and this video is brought to you by BrandmanNetwork.com because I signed myself. Now, we got to talk about some of these scare tactics that are really starting to take place over the last couple of years when it comes to record labels, independence, and really it's just some straight up propaganda at this point.
For an example, what you'll find again and again on the internet is so many people speaking against record labels, demonizing record labels, and not individually, right? This might not be somebody's intentions, but collectively it feels like fear mongering, full blown propaganda once again against record labels and just trying to pander to audiences to make them feel like the independent is the only way because they're already thinking that. But at the end of the day, let's start here, right? Of course, there truly are plenty of bad record label deals. Plenty of them. I'm going to acknowledge that. And hey, I mean, we got situations like the classic TLC selling 10 million records and then only getting paid $35K per member. So y'all get $105K when y'all sold 10 million records. And then you think about that back in the day, that means 10 million records at least $10 probably per CD. That's $100 million. And you throw on a tour on top of that. They only got $105K off of over $100 million. Ridiculous. But you can even look at contracts like Kanye West not even being able to retire. But be clear, that was a publishing contract, not a typical record deal. By the time you get to the end of this, you'll see why that doesn't matter as well. So if it is all bad when it comes to record labels, why do we have people like Russ, right, hooking up with Columbia? He's that DIY do-it-yourself dude. And then why did Nipsey Hussle sign with Atlantic? We'll get into all those things. But what's most important for artists to actually understand is the business model of the company they are working with, because once you understand the business model of the company you're working with, it's a lot easier to understand the decisions that they make and the way their business is set up. A lot of times artists' problems with record labels is about mismanaged expectations, them not understanding what the business that they're working with is. So then when they have certain decisions that get made, right, certain things that get tried, it's like, yo man, well I thought we were in this as friends. No, it's a business. So let's look at it this way, right? New artists are unlikely to have the capital necessary to get their projects off the ground. And of course, it's difficult to grow when you don't have certain resources at the end of the day. And then you have people like superstars where you can own your masters, you can have control, but that's really hard to get to, right? That's not the point that most people are at. So it's easy to dismiss the facts and basically say, yo, all record labels are on this slave stuff and everything like that. One, we got to understand the business model is that of a bank. But we do have to acknowledge that record labels do take on risk as a business as well, which we'll get into a little bit deeper later. But just consider this part. If they give you $150,000 or $200,000, yes, this is a recoupable advance. But if that money is not made back, the record label is the only person who loses that money, right? They gave you $200K. You never made them enough to actually make that money back, so they lose that money. You just walk off scot-free, technically, at the end of the day. And this is not even something super uncommon when we look at a lot of investors in general. Investors want their money back first. They're going to get those preferred stocks. They're not going to be getting common stocks, which is essentially saying, yo, we get our money back when the company sells. We want to make sure our investment is safe and you don't run off with the check.
And think about it like this, in a lot of different situations, you probably come off similar to a record label, right? Because some people might need something for you, and based on the needs that they have, you will determine what you're willing to give up or what you require for them to create certainty in your mind. You'll be able to continue on how you want to, right? It's like houses. We think about record labels as a bank a lot of times. People use that terminology. There's some small differences, but it's the same with houses. A lot of these people don't own their house. They're getting a loan from a bank. The bank owns the house and they have to pay the bank back. And when they pay the bank back, okay, now they own the house. The big difference and the weird, crazy part about record labels is you essentially pay them the loan back and then all of a sudden they still own the house. That masters in a lot of these contracts. And that's a whole nother situation. But we have to consider the fact that businesses are willing to make a bet based on the level of trustworthiness they feel is in the situation, the level of risk they're willing to take. Record labels are risk averse, which means they aren't willing to take that much risk. They're trying to take as much risk off the table as possible. And there's a lot of people like that in life, right? Real life. You got some people who want to just jump off the diving board. You got some people who have to put one foot in the water, the next foot in the water, and slowly work themselves into it, right? Some people need a huge safety net, and that's pretty much the record label. Record labels are basically like that kid who's afraid, right? They're afraid of the dark, and you can convince them that there's no monster under the bed, but they need certainty. And even if you tell them, right, with your words that no, there is no monster under the bed, they might still need you to pick them up, right? Pat them on the back, follow you into your room, and then sleep with you that night. And they probably gonna take all the covers too. That's how much work and sometimes how lopsided these deals can get. That's for sure. But on the other hand, this is just the business models that some people are working with. When you understand the business model and approach that people are working with, it's easier to understand the intentions and what they're looking to get done and what they're willing to allow to be done. But there's two reasons why record labels still aren't the worst thing in the world. One being that every artist is not an entrepreneur. Yes, we're pushing this whole indie thing in this era. Yes, you hear entrepreneurship pushed every day in this era, but every artist isn't meant to be an entrepreneur from ground up. They don't even desire some of those things that come with an indie life. So if you do not want the things that come with an indie life, then you might not want to pursue that route. Maybe you evolve one day, 5 years down the line, you become that person. But if that's not what you actually want and desire, you can't let somebody else convince you that that's what you should do with your life when it's still your life, because you're going to have to live with it, whatever that consequence is. There's struggles on both sides. I've broken that down in the video. But number two is there's actually good deals. They're very hard to get, but we'll get into that.
All right, so when we say a good deal is possible, let's look at the deal that essentially Nipsey Hussle and Russ both got, right? Now, all the details on what Nipsey Hussle said isn't out there on his particular deal, but one quote he has is saying, "It's a partnership. I shook hands and said I wouldn't give full details, but we're sharing everything. Profit, masters. I was holding out for a long time for these terms." And when we look at Russ's deal with Atlantic, he had similar language. He said with the profit split deal, right? Nipsey Hussle talked about profit sharing. He said, "Let's do the math. I got 300 songs out and I did an album deal. None of the 300 songs get touched," which is dope, right? That means none of that stuff he did outside of them, none of it gets touched. It's only shit on the album. And off that album, you're going to give me a bunch of money. After that money gets recouped, then we split everything 50-50. So both of these things actually allude to what they call a joint venture. When we talk about partnership, we can get into those details, but considering the legalities of a partnership and how it works, you're probably not going to find a record label do a true partnership with an artist or a indie type label. Why? Because at the end of the day, they're going to have to assume equal risk as the artist. And once again, they are in the risk avoiding business. They are not trying to take any risk, and they are not going to be true blue partners for the most part. Now, these deals can have something different in terms of the terms. Don't know that for sure. But some cool things to note is the fact that Russ actually outperformed artists like Beyonce, Chance the Rapper, Coldplay, Childish Gambino, all in 2017. And although some of that probably can be attributed to the deal with Columbia, he still did have a strong foundation himself. And even Nipsey Hussle was making comfortably into the six figures off of his music every single month when he signed his deal. So these guys were already established. However, there was another level that they wanted to go to, and they saw fit that a record label be necessary for that process. Russ again and again says his whole thing is to get to the highest potential of artists, the most commercial, the most visibility that he can be, without, of course, getting rid of certain levels of control and just sacrificing his integrity. So what's the big deal about this whole joint venture deal? What exactly does it look like? Again, it's not really a partnership in many of these situations. Some of these, hey, they could be very well, but just instead look at it this way, right? They split profits with an artist, and instead of paying in advance against a royalty, all of the project's expenses like the distribution fees, the overhead, operating costs are all collected and deducted from revenue. That means the streaming, the record sales, licensing, foreign income, all money remaining after that would be the profit. This right here gets split between the company and the artist. And with that being said, that's the most popular deal structure for most of the entities that have a lot of power, that get acknowledged for having their own movements and having a lot of control. Not just Russ, not just Nipsey Hussle. If you look at movements like Quality Control, I believe TDE, and the thing is, right, Quality Control and TDE, they get recognized more so as labels. Nipsey signed himself to All Money In, his own label, and then, right, did a joint venture with Atlantic between All Money In and Atlantic. Russ basically did the same thing on paper. He signed to himself, and then he did a deal, right, with Columbia. So this is a deal that could be considered a good deal and desirable for so many artists, right? For so many people that are managers or labels that are trying to build something up. But for one, you have to understand that this requires leverage to actually get these terms. You have to be able to build something up to a certain extent. And when you look at it, these companies, they don't really mind giving a pretty decent deal if you have the leverage, because once again, please remember, they are in the risk avoiding business. If you come off as low risk, then sure, we'll go ahead and give you the money, make some easy money back, and let you go ahead and flip it for us and bring us back something. But if you don't have much going on, you're pretty much going to have to give them your arm, your leg, and your best friend just to actually get that deal. So keep that in mind. And one of the things that all these people tend to have are full-blown teams. When we talk about that leverage, part of that is having a team and a system for yourself. Quality Control has their own team, system, and connections that they're working. Same for Nipsey Hussle. Same for Russ. They're moving. If you get one of these deals, not just even a joint venture, just a regular record label deal without having a team to really run your system, yeah, good luck with that. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that if you do not have a team, they're probably aware that you do not have a team. And if they signed you without having a team, there might be other intentions for them signing you other than just because the fact they want to sign you and blow you up. That's probably not the reason they signed you. But that's a whole nother video, neither here nor there. Wendy Day has said that record deals aren't evil. One-sided record deals are evil. Record deals that shelf the artist are evil. Unfairly oppressive deals are evil. Labels who have no idea what they are doing are evil. And understand, with all that being said, just as evil is an artist signing a deal without educating themselves on what they're doing, or even just going indie off of a sole blind idea that people are telling them to do without educating themselves and putting the execution behind it to make that a successful route. Signing a record deal needs to be looked at as strategic. You should know what you're signing. You should know why you're signing it. And even if they aren't the most favorable terms, if you can at least understand that, then you should be able to plan around it in some sort of way where you aren't surprised. When you're surprised as an artist, that's when it becomes a huge problem. You have to educate yourself to be able to make the best decision for yourself, because people throw around so many terms: the joint venture, right? The partnership, the 360 deal, just the classic record label deal, whatever kind of foolishness people are going to make up. Ignore all those semantics. Like, some people have the same names of their deals, but they have completely different terms. Start with the terms, right? Bump all the semantics, start with the terms, and then, if you want to create a name and put a little spin on it, go ahead and do that. But understand your terms, what's on paper, because that's the part that can get you in trouble or help you out.
So the moral of the story is there is a such thing as good record deals, but you probably aren't going to get that up front. You have to actually work to get it. The first deals that you get presented and what people will start with is not going to be the thing that ultimately will serve you. You have to work and figure out what you want and then find things that meet those requirements. You can't just expect to get a great record deal presented to you. You have to do that work to make it happen. And there's struggles on both sides, being an indie and being on a label. I've broken that down in the video before. I'll put a link to that in the description below. But just understand that this independent thing is cool. It's a trend and it's really dope. I prefer, if you can, right, do the independent thing, right? And I do encourage as much ownership and control as possible for an artist, 100%. So I'm not preaching against being independent at all, but bigger than that is having the self-awareness, understanding what you want out of your career, and not letting people fearmonger you and pander to you just to make this huge entity seem scary and just to get clicks or to seem like they're talking about something cool. You have to be able to think for yourself. One, get a lawyer. First of all, get a lawyer. And I don't mean their lawyer, right? Not the label's lawyer or your manager's lawyer or whoever else's lawyer that you're doing business with. No, you have to have your own independent lawyer, third party from the situation. That's going to help big time. But two, do not let people scare you out of thinking for yourself, or even just sell you on this one dream that happens for everybody, or this one dream that's better for everybody, right? Because either way it goes, if you aren't thinking for yourself and whatever your specific situation is, then you're likely going to take an L on either side. So keep that in mind. And as always, this video is brought to you by BrandmanNetwork.com. We help artists market themselves and build their fan bases. If you like this video, go ahead and like button. If you like it, you might as well share it. If you're not, subscribe. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button.